Welcome back to High Class Gear. Today, folks, we're diving into a subject that's more complicated than a game of political chess played on a Jenga tower during an earthquake. Political systems. We're not talking about the usual suspects, no red versus blue, no donkeys versus elephants. Today we're going global, dissecting the systems that shape nations, from the dusty scrolls of history to the sleek screens of the modern world. We'll be exploring the origins, the pros and cons, and the global impact of each system. Because let's be honest, understanding these systems is about more than just passing a high school civics test. It's about understanding the very fabric of our world. So buckle up, grab your thinking caps, or, that one baseball cap you haven't washed in a while, because things are about to get intellectually stimulating. We're going on a wild ride through the world's top 5 political systems. Let's kick things off with the political system that everyone loves to claim they have, but few seem to fully achieve: democracy. This system, where the power supposedly rests in the hands of the people, has roots older than your uncle's questionable Facebook rants. We're talking ancient Greece, roughly 500 BCE. Picture toga-clad philosophers debating while simultaneously inventing geometry, and you've got the general vibe. Athens was the first to give this whole voting thing a whirl. Fast forward a couple of millennia, and democracy's gone more mainstream than a cat video on the internet. Over half the world's countries now identify as democratic, according to the UN. You've got your big hitters like the United States and India, the world's largest democracy. So, what are the perks of this whole power to the people thing? Well, for starters, democracy tends to champion individual freedoms. It's also supposed to ensure equal representation, though let's be honest, that one's a bit of a work in progress. Now, for the downsides, democracies are often criticized for being slow, prone to gridlock, and easily influenced by, shall we say, well-funded interest groups. Economically, democracies tend to favor free market systems, which, when done right, can lead to economic growth. Of course, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Democracies can also struggle with income inequality. On the global stage, democratic nations often play a leading role, pushing for international cooperation and human rights. Next up, we're stepping into a time machine and traveling back to a world of castles, crowns, and enough inbreeding to make a geneticist sweat monarchy. This system, where a single ruler, usually with a fancy title like king or queen, holds the reins of power, is about as old as civilization itself. For centuries, monarchies were the dominant force on the political landscape. Fortunately for those of us who aren't fans of arbitrary beheadings, monarchies have, for the most part, mellowed out a bit. Today you've got your constitutional monarchies like the UK, where the monarch is basically a national mascot with a really impressive hat collection. Then you've got your absolute monarchies, which are a bit more, shall we say, old school. Think Saudi Arabia, where the royal family holds more power than a Texas oil baron at a gas station price-fixing meeting. So, what are the pros of having your head of state be someone who can trace their lineage back to a time when bathing was considered a luxury? Well, for one, monarchies can provide a sense of stability and continuity. Of course, the downside is that if you get a bad monarch, you're pretty much stuck with them until they either die or decide to abdicate. Absolute monarchies in particular are often criticized for their lack of democracy and human rights abuses. Economically, monarchies are a mixed bag. Some, like Saudi Arabia, sit atop vast oil reserves, giving them global economic clout. Now let's talk about a political system that's about as far from monarchy as you can get: communism. This ideology, dreamed up by everyone's favorite bearded 19th century German philosopher Karl Marx, is all about equality, collectivism, and the abolition of private property. Marx, along with his partner in crime Friedrich Engels, envisioned a world where the workers would rise up, seize the means of production, and create a classless society. It sounded great in theory, like a giant utopian potluck where everyone brings their best dish and no one fights over the last slice of pizza. In practice, however, communism has been a bit more complicated. The 20th century saw the rise of communist regimes in Russia, China, Cuba, and elsewhere, each attempting to build their own version of Marx's utopia. The results, as you might imagine, were mixed. On the one hand, communist states often made significant strides in social welfare. Free education, healthcare, and housing were the norm in many of these countries, and income inequality was significantly reduced. On the other hand, communist regimes often struggled with the whole individual freedom thing. Freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and the freedom to criticize the government were often curtailed. Economically, communist states have had a bit of a roller coaster ride. The Soviet Union managed to transform itself from a backward agrarian society into a global superpower in a few short decades. However, its centrally planned economy eventually stagnated, leading to shortages and inefficiency. Today, the few remaining communist states like China have adopted a more pragmatic approach, blending socialist principles with market-based reforms. Now let's move on to a system that's often confused with its more radical cousin, communism-socialism. Socialism, at its core, is about using the power of the government to promote social and economic equality. It's about ensuring that everyone has access to basic necessities like healthcare, education, and a living wage. Think of it as capitalism with a conscience. Unlike communism, which advocates for the complete abolition of private property, socialism is cool with private property. What they are interested in is making sure that the wealth generated by society is distributed more equitably. On one end, you've got your more moderate social democracies like those found in Scandinavia. These countries balance free market capitalism with a robust social safety net, resulting in high levels of social well-being. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got your more revolutionary socialist movements, which argue that true equality can only be achieved through the socialization of the means of production. Socialism's impact on the world has been significant, inspiring labor movements and social justice reforms. And finally, we arrive at the dark side of the political spectrum, authoritarianism. This system is all about concentrating power in the hands of a single person or a small group of elites. Think of it as the my way or the highway approach to governance. Authoritarian regimes come in all shapes and sizes. You've got your dictatorships where a single leader rules with an iron fist. Think North Korea, where the Kim dynasty has been calling the shots for over 70 years. Then you've got your military juntas, where a group of generals decides they'd rather run the country than defend it. One of the key features of authoritarian regimes is their lack of accountability. Elections, if they happen at all, are usually rigged. Freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and the freedom to assemble are all severely restricted. So why would anyone choose to live under such a system? Well, for one, authoritarian regimes can be very efficient. With no pesky opposition parties or independent media to slow them down, they can implement policies quickly and decisively. Of course, those policies might involve throwing political opponents in prison or building a giant statue of the leader in the town square. Another selling point of authoritarianism is stability. In times of crisis or uncertainty, people often crave strong leadership, even if it comes at the expense of their freedoms. Authoritarianism is a stark reminder that power, when left unchecked, can be a dangerous thing. Well, there you have it, folks, a whirlwind tour of the world's top 5 political systems. We've explored their histories, their pros and cons, and their impact on the world. We've seen how democracy, for all its flaws, offers the best hope for freedom and equality. We've delved into the complexities of monarchy, the contradictions of communism, the nuances of socialism, and the dangers of authoritarianism. So, what's the best system? Well, as with most things in life, there's no easy answer. The ideal political system for a given country depends on a variety of factors, including its history, culture, economic development, and the aspirations of its people. What's important is that we engage in thoughtful and informed discussions about these systems, that we challenge our own assumptions, and that we never stop striving for a more just and equitable world. Host, thanks for watching High Class Gear. Which political system do you think works best? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the topics that shape our world. Give us a like if you enjoyed this video, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you next time.